Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are back on the Frankenhauler, and I'm going to tell you why your ideas won't work. All right, guys, well, before we get into it today, I just want to take a quick second out to thank this week's sponsor, which is Viofo and their A329T 3-channel dash cam. So this is a very high-end dash cam in that it has a regular 4K HD dash cam for out the front, but it also has a second telephoto camera for out the front with a 4-time optical zoom to pick up all of those minute details like number plates, etc. And it's got a third 2K camera out the rear. All three cameras are also powered by the Sony Starva sensors. So let's chuck this in my old Mercedes Barb and see how it goes.
So here I have the Viofo 4K dash cam and a whole lot of the accessories, starting with the 4K dash cam, the 2K telephoto camera and the 2K rear camera, along with all of the installation cables required. Installation is super simple. Just peel and stick the front camera and telephoto camera onto the front screen, plug in and tuck away the wires, then same again, peel and stick on the rear screen, and then run the cables to the main unit.
Now, all three cameras support HDR or high dynamic range, which reduces overexposure at night. It has a massive external storage capability of up to 4 terabytes. Now, it's capable of fast file transfer with Wi-Fi 6,
enabling you to download 4K videos in under 10 seconds.
It has a built-in GPS for accurate location, speed, and time data for your recordings. Now, it also has efficient parking mode with quick start. So what that means is the camera is in a quiet mode using very little power while it is resting, but in the event that there is an incident within 2 seconds, it's going to start capturing footage and it will record for a minute. But if there is another bump within that 1 minute, it will extend that recording to 3 minutes. I am totally amazed at the range of that 4K telephoto lens. The detail it gets at that distance is absolutely second to none. So head over, check out Viofo. There's a link in the description. And as always, go and help out the companies that help out the channel. All right, let's get back to the build. All right, guys, welcome back. And those of you who've been following know this is the Frankenhauler. This is my 1954 Ford F600 truck cab on a 1995 Toyota Coaster bus chassis that I'm going to be building a car carrier out of. Now, if you're following last episode, I talked about my big change of plans. Originally, I was going to make my tray come all the way off and go flat on the ground, and now I am pretty set on just making a tipper tray with pull-out ramps. If you missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and like always, do all the things, like and subscribe and comment. All of that stuff helps out that crazy algorithm. Now, there were heaps of comments about different ways I can do things. There were so many people saying the exact same things over and over and over again, and I love all the comments, but there were about 4 main comments that kept being repeated over and over and over and over and over and over again. So let's go through them now, and I'll show you why your version won't really work. So one of the big ones that lots of people suggested was going to buy an old used tilt tray and just put that mechanism on the back. Americans, I believe, call them a rollback. I think it's a similar sort of thing. Basically, where like most of the tow trucks you see around these days, where it has a ramp that tips and then extends down and touches the ground. The big issues with that is if anybody has actually tried to get low cars onto those, they really are not good for low cars, because the problem is that the angle is too steep. They can't get it down low enough and getting a low car on, you hit the nose of the car. Other issue is that they're all really heavy duty. I haven't seen any really light ones, and if they are, they're definitely not cheap and easily available, and none of them are actually cheap anyway. So I discounted that straight away. It's not fit for the purpose that I need. The number one suggestion that I got a million times is, why don't you do something like the skip bin trucks? So basically the skip bins have those big steel bins that they lift off of the back of the truck with a hydraulic arm that lifts it up and places the bin flat on the ground behind the truck. There is a very good reason why that is not really suitable in this case, and I'll show you why. All right, so here is my basic skip bin truck. So you can see this is the Frankenhauler in roughly the correct dimensions. This is how a skip bin truck works. It has a short, tall bin with a very high lifting point, and that is important. And basically an arm, a hydraulic arm, will lift up the bin and make it travel in an arc, something like this, and then place it on the ground behind the truck. Now, that works well for skip bins. I'll show you why it doesn't work as well for the Frankenhauler. All right, so you see my tray here. Now, the highest I can really get the pivot is by putting a connection point at the top of the tray in line with the roof line. I don't want to have this big thing sticking up right in the air up here somewhere. It has to stick like this. So basically, as the tray, the arm lifts, the tray is going to get higher and higher and higher and higher until finally the back of it hits the ground, and then it will continue to move along and sit flat on the ground. That looks fine. The issue is with these measurements, this point here is at 3.5 meters in the air. That's 30 centimeters higher than the very peak of my garage. That is an extremely high angle to try and set up my tilt tray. There are some car carriers I have seen that use a similar method to this, but they do it slightly differently. The method that I have seen used with something like this is slightly different. So they actually have two rams and they have a tray system that slides the tray rearwards first. Once it gets back to a reasonable distance, it then starts its tilting and does the same system to sit flat on the ground. But that requires another trolley system. It's basically as complicated as the one I needed before, but I need two lots of rams and everything gets heavy and the whole thing, more weight and more complications, and ultimately what I'm trying to do is keep everything nice and light. The other big suggestion I got a lot was putting airbags suspension in the rear of the truck to lower that tray even more and get a better angle on the back of the truck, which is not a bad suggestion. I will be lowering this truck to what I can get it to. I'm thinking I'm probably going to get it to sit at about 150 millimeters off the ground. So that's pretty low. To be road legal in Australia, you need to have a minimum ride height of 100 millimeters. So I could actually lower this truck to 100 millimeters with the original suspension and be legal. If you put airbags, the airbags also at full low, you still need 100 millimeters of clearance. Like I said, I can basically make it that low and drive around with it all the time. If it becomes an issue, that's something I can add, but it's not necessarily going to be super helpful. And the last suggestion, which was a common one, and I totally get it, is to do a ramp truck, traditional ramp truck, or a beaver tail. Ultimately, I don't like the look of a ramp truck. Yes, a ramp truck could be practical because you've got all this room for storage underneath, but they don't look good. I just don't like it. I don't want that look for the Frankenhauler. It's just not what I'm going for. So although it is a good option and a simple one, it's not what I'm looking for in this case. And I think ultimately for keeping the weight down so I can keep the whole thing under 4.5 ton, with a car on the back is just to have a simple single ram to just tilt the tray, drop the back of the tray down low, and then have extended ramps. I can also set it up so that with the tray, I can actually lower the tray down so that I have a really low approach angle on the ramps, and also a low approach angle on the tray itself. And then partway up getting the car, if the front is particularly low, I can get the car up on the ramps and then raise the tray up and make that approach angle even flatter and just pull the car up with the winch that will be installed in the tray. So for simplicity and weight and everything, I really think that just having a tilt, keep it simple, stupid, just have a simple tilting tray with pull-out ramps. It's not as fancy and as amazing as what it could look with the tray coming all the way off the back. But I think just practicality-wise, it's simple and reliable, and it will work.
With all that said, I am still up in the air on what I actually will do, but we'll get to that when we get there. I've still got some time to think about things before I fully commit. But now we are back in and just tidying up the last bits on the door. I thought I'd grind back some areas, and of course I made some more holes that I had to weld up and touch up. A little bit of panel beading, and then I can start getting on and doing some body filler on the doors to make everything nice and neat and smooth. Now, I'm not going for perfection here, as you guys know, but I still want it to be a reasonably neat finish on the bits that you see. And we're looking at the same again on the inner guard. So where I did my modifications and welded in my patches, I just want to blend in that edge and just get rid of the rough welding and grinding marks from that. Then it's my favourite, it's sanding time. So for these bits, I'm using 80 grit sandpaper by hand just to knock the edges off of all of this and blend it in and get it looking a little bit nice and tidy. And then I use the DA on the inner guards where I can. Just, again, it's just to make it quick and easy and get it ready for the high fill primer that is going to come. Then it's time to start cleaning things up. I use a wax and grease remover to sort of get everything nice and neat and tidy, and then I start going over everything with my rust converter. The same process as I've used previously. I wipe the rust converter on with a bit of Scotch-Brite and leave it for about 15 minutes. What this does is it turns all the surface rust black and neutralizes it, so I can then come back and wash it all off with a bit of water with some bicarb soda in it, and then I can blow it all off. I make sure I really get in there with the blower and get any trace of water out of any of the little creases, etc. Give it a one last clean with wax and grease remover, and now I'm mixing up the Concept Paints 2K High Fill Primer. And of course, High Fill Primer is thicker, so I'll be applying it with my primer gun, which is a 2mm tip.
Alright, all this stuff is under High Fill Primer now, including a couple of Rockster bits. I just chucked a light coat of primer on all of the hinges, and I just did the High Fill on the sides of the door. All of the center of the door is all going to be covered, so it's just really just tidying up some of these little bits on the side of the door, just making them look a little bit prettier, and we're going to give that a day or so to set up and come back to tomorrow. So it's time to move back onto the truck. Okay, so with the paintwork done, it's time to start looking at the final assembly of the interior of the truck. So first things first, I think I'm going to get under while I've still got space and get those wipers back in again.
So for those who missed it, I previously modified the original Toyota wiper motor so I can use all the original wiring and switches and everything from the bus, but I modified it to fit the original truck wiper stalks and mounts, so I don't have to change any switches or rewire anything. And that's some serious concentration time going on there.
All right, well, I have my front cowl here that fits in here like this, and it's supposed to pop up. I don't mind this feature if it makes a lot of wind noise, I might seal it in later, but for the time being, I want to keep it. And I have one of the hinges here. The trouble is that the other hinge broke off. It looked like it had a tiny little tack weld, all that was ever holding it in, and that broke off the other side. So I need to give this a quick coat of black, and then let's see if we can mount it into position.
So a quick clean up and shoot it with my favourite black enamel. And once it's dry, I need to then drill out the original brackets and mount it into the truck in the right position so that it works with the cowl vent. Once I'm happy, I can climb underneath and tack it in with the MIG. Then I need to mount in some captive metric nuts because originally this was drilled out for Imperial. Spray them black using some cardboard to catch the overspray and fit the cowl vent in and make sure it all works.
So under here, I actually have the original opening arm that connects up to that cowl vent, and the original bracket is completely toast and not working, and I don't have the original mounting points up there or anything anymore. So I need to make this bracket again and see if we can get this original lever arm to still do what it did before.
So first things first is I need to remove the lever from the old bracket and then start making up the new bracket. Cut it with the guillotine and mark it and fold it into a reinforced length. Then I need to trim and fold the ends so that it can line up with the mounting points. And you can see here I had to actually flip it over and reverse some of the folds I did, but I tack it back together again with the TIG, and all that makes it much stronger. Then drill out some holes to bolt it in and trial fit it. And so you can see I've got the front edge lined up under the dash, but the back edge is going to mount into the reinforcing bar I put across the dash previously. So once I worked out where the rear fold needed to be, I made a cut and bent it, and I've actually cut out little wedges that I can weld into the gaps I created to make a super strong fold there and really make a nice strong bracket. Clean it all up, and then I can drill in and mount the rear mount using a riv nut.
So I have my reinforcing bracket that I folded up and welded up, so it's nice and super tough. This thing is a rock. I've got a mounting point that I put a riv nut up under the dash because I can't get to it to weld it anymore, and a lot of people ask me why I don't use riv nuts more often, and it's mostly because I don't mind them on the interior of a car and on a finished piece, but captive nuts, welded captive nuts are just better in every way. So I use welded captive nuts wherever I can. So now I have this piece, I need to work out exactly where I need to mount the actual opening lever for the cowl vent onto this, and yeah, see how that goes.
So now my bracket bolts under the dash, but to get the lever in the right spot was actually more difficult than I expected. I had to make an angled base for it with captive nuts, but it came out quite nice in the end.
All right, that was a crazy amount of work, but my bracket is working perfectly and I've got the lever working as it did. I can easily reach under and just... That's awesome! I love it! How good is that? That is awesome. I am very happy. That just simple things. All right, let's pull the bracket out now and paint it, and then we can install it for good. All right, I've left this, it's been a couple of days now, so I'm going to go through, I'm going to guide coat everything and sand it all back and get it ready for some paint. Then all of the front panels will be ready to bolt back onto the cab.
So let's get back into it, and first things first is I'm going over everything with the guide coat, which again I'm using this 3M powder guide coat, which I prefer than spray on guide coat. Then on the DA, I'm actually using 320 grit, just because that is what I had to hand to rub back all of this high fill primer. It's probably a little bit coarser than you'd like. Usually I like to use sort of nothing coarser than 400, but this is just an old truck. I'm not as super critical, and it actually comes out pretty good in the end, I think. The bits that I can't get with a DA, I get over with some wet and dry, and I definitely used some hot water in the bucket on this morning because it was cold. I do have a shop assistant in Shorty who comes and sees what's going on, which is good for morale. So when everything is blocked back with 320, I go over and then start cleaning the panel. Using the blower, again, making sure I get into all the crevices, because the last thing you want when you start spraying the colour and the clear is water to come out from any of the seams. So I thoroughly clean everything and then rearrange it all in the booth so I can get around everything. It would be good to have a bit more storage space, so I didn't have storage in the corners of the booth, but we're not there yet. With a basic wash out of the way, I go again with wax and grease remover, making sure everything is super clean before I start adding any paint. For any of the parts that have been rubbed through, bare metal, etc., I hit them with some etch primer before I go back and start mixing up the paint. So as these parts are all internal, they are all going to be painted in the bronze colour, which is a base coat, and then once I've got a good coverage on that, I go over everything in a matte clear. 2 good coats, and I'm happy with that for the internals of this truck.
Alright, so we have all of the front end panels now painted, the inside of the doors, door hinges, etc. So I can assemble this front end of the truck next week. But for now, let's move back to the cab and get some more done in here. All right, so with those panels done, the next thing I want to do is I want to add the heater to the truck. Now, eventually I'll connect up air conditioning, but I just want to get it running and driving and being a truck first. Aircon is something that I can add much, much later. It's going to have good airflow with this Cowl vent, with the quarter window glasses and stuff like that. It'll actually be reasonably comfortable to drive in the summer, but in the winter, it definitely needs a heater, and it also, to make it road legal, they have to have demisters. So I've got the heaters out of the bus. This is a very simple unit that I can just plug in. I actually just tested the wiring just to make sure that the fan runs. The fan runs and it's all good. It's got a heater core in here. And what I'm looking at is that this end, this box end at the moment, will just blast the heat wherever it goes. I think I can look at scanning this and 3D printing something that'll actually have some ducting and some different sort of fun stuff in it. So that's a challenge for later. First things first, let's get this in under the dash. I have been looking at it and I think I'm going to sit it somewhere about there under the dash so that the plumbing's going to come straight out of the firewall. I think it's going to be perfect, and I've got it. It's here, it's free, let's put it in.
So to get the perfect mounting of the heater on the firewall, I marked one of the coolant outlets and then laid the heater onto a piece of cardboard and transferred the second outlet and all of the mounting bolts all onto that, so I could transfer that and work from the front of the dash, which is much easier to see where I'm going. Once I've marked the holes, I drilled them out and test fit everything. Once I knew the heater would fit, I had to make the coolant line holes slightly larger so they could fit rubber grommets so that it's all sealed in nicely. But this heater, particularly in the orientation it is such an easy thing to mount. I'm happy I went this way.
All right, so I've just been pondering here. I have my heater core mounted and the outlet from the truck is right down here, and there's actually a second outlet here. There were 2 heater outlets. I am thinking this is the regular heat outlet and this is a secondary one. I don't know whether it had 2 just because it was a bus. It did have heat pipes that went all the way down the back, but essentially there's 2 outlets, and then on this side of the engine, there is actually a pipe underneath this manifold here that travels all the way along. That is the exit of it out there. So I started going down the track of going, okay, how do I plumb this in? How do I plumb in the turbo and all the rest of it? And I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll just run the coolant out of the engine, into the heater, out of the heater, into the turbo, out of the turbo, and back in the engine. The issue that I'm realizing I have is that I need to put a valve on the heater. That's how you have more or less heat, is depending on how much flow you let go through here. And if I had that set up that way in series, basically when I turn the heater off, there's no coolant going to the turbo. It blocks all of that coolant, and that's not good. So I've realized, because I've got 2 outlets here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one outlet coming into my heat valve. It let coolant flow through the heater and get your heat inside. It'll come out from the valve, and that will join into a T-piece that joins into the outlet from the second heat valve. So all of the coolant will return via the turbo, but it will have a constant supply from the secondary heat outlet, and that's the way I think I'm going to run it. So let's start getting some Raceworks hoses out and fittings and see if we can make it all do the thing.
So I'm ashamed to admit, this actually took me at least an hour of playing around just to get the first coolant pipe in.
All right, so the first lot is in. So I have the out from the heater going into a T-piece that's back here with a bunch of Raceworks AN fittings that go around, and they tuck into the back here, and then this one joins onto the inlet of the turbo. Outlet of the turbo still needs to be connected up to into the water pump, and then I still need to also do the other outlet from the engine and up to the inlet of the heater. Yep, that's a lot of playing around, sort of tucking and getting those heater core lines in there, but we will have a heater that's going to work, and I've still got to tuck the hoses away and things like that, but it'll be sorted out next week because I'm out of time. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, when the Ford panel van was discontinued in 1957 with the 3rd generation F series, Ford began designing a whole new line to replace it. Released in September 1960 for the 1961 model year was the first generation of the Ford Econoline. The Ford Econoline was based on the Ford Falcon chassis with a 90-inch wheelbase, which is the shortest Ford since 1908. As such, it was a Ford control vehicle with the driver sitting above the front axle. It ran a mid-engine layout to keep a lower floor, powered by a 2.4-litre straight-six or optional 2.8-litre 6. For 1965, the 2.8-litre engine became standard with an optional 3.9-litre straight-six. It was offered in a wide range of body styles, as a 4-door, a 6-door, an 8-door, a pickup truck, and from 1965 as an extended supervan. The Ford E-Series has gone on to be the 3rd best-selling van line in history after the Ford Transit and the Volkswagen Transporter. Right.
All right, I'm really happy. I have finally got all of the front end panels painted up, so next week I can start reassembling the front end of the truck and actually have it so that it's all together. It's getting close.
I'm always happy. I want bits to be together, not spread out.
Yes, and hopefully tail shaft will come back soon, and we'll have it running and moving around under its own power, which will be absolutely amazing. But I do need to finish the brakes first, so there's stuff to do. There's little bits and pieces that are just will take a little bit of time, but we're getting there. We're
getting there. Yes. That's it. Like, comment, and subscribe, and Jeff loves to read your comments.
Yep.
And Patreon, help him out. See the videos a day early.
Yes.
Support him on this journey of madness.
It's certainly mad.
Automobile wilderness.
All right, guys. See you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
When the Ford panel van was discontinued in 1957 with the third generation F series, released in September 1960 for the first generation. The Ford Econoline was based on the Ford chassis with a 91-inch wheelbase, which is the shortest.
90-inch.
Why did I get 91? That's so
I
random.
don't know.
With a 90-inch wheelbase. The Ford Econoline was based on a with an option of 3.4 litre straight six.
3.9 litre.
For 1965, the 3. No, whatever. For 1965, the 2.8, yes,